Evening, everybody. Hi, I'm Mike Krause from the Independence Institute, and I'll be moderating tonight's event. It'll be pretty straightforward. All of the panelists are going to get 10 minutes to make introductory remarks, and then we'll go back through, and there'll be 5 minutes for what you might call rebuttal remarks. And the order is going to be Mr. Gorman, Jessica Corey, Carol Chambers, and then David Williams. A reminder that we will be doing Q&A at the end of this. However, the questions will be taken in written form, and so there will be paper and pen being passed out amongst you. So if you want to write down a question, and then we will take it at that time. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll start. Tom, we're going to start with you. So if you could come up to the podium, and then Jessica, you're going to be second. So at some point during Tom's, if you could come up to be prepared to go. Thomas J. Gorman is director of the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, and I'm sure if you don't know what that means, he can explain it to you. He graduated from San Jose State University and began his law enforcement career in '68 when he went to work for the California Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement, the BNE. During that career, he served in many capacities, including 10 years as an undercover agent, making more than 1,000 undercover purchases of all types of illicit drugs, and has received 2 Purple Hearts, resulting from both being shot and then later stabbed. Mr. Gorman has also served as the deputy... Tom, this happened on different days, correct? Yeah. All right. Mr. Gorman has also served as the deputy chief out of Fresno Regional Office, where he was in charge of the statewide drug enforcement operations for the Attorney General's office. In 1997, he retired from BNE and to become the director of the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area here in Colorado. Tom Gorman is also a graduate of the FBI National Academy and a past president of the California Narcotics Officers Association and the National Alliance of State Drug Enforcement Agencies, and has written numerous articles on drug enforcement, and did write the Attorney General's Office first drug user ID manual. He authored nationally recognized publications such as The Myths of Drug Legalization and Marijuana is Not a Medicine. He also recently published a book titled To Believe or Not to Believe, That is the Question, Undercover Agent's Quest for the Truth. Tom has been married to his high school sweetheart, Denise, for 49 years, and they have 2 children, Terry and Tom Jr. Very nice. Tom, this will be 10 minutes, so at about 30 seconds, I'm going to flash you the green.
Okay.
And then when you're done, I'm going to flash you the red.
Okay.
So take it away. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate you all being here, and I hope that we have a good audience. I was asked to wear this, but I was afraid one of you would get a picture of me. I'd be your poster board for the election in 2012, so I'm not going to do that. Get a good look. Okay. What I want to do is in any kind of debate, I think it's important that you know the background. You're going to hear a lot of statistics, a lot of differences of opinion, and that's a good thing as we try to make our mind up as what's the right thing to do about the drug issue in this country. But you've got to know the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend my 10 minutes giving you a little bit of background on what it's all about. And first of all, the question is, why do we have drug policy? The reason we have drug policy in this country is very simple. We want to minimize the number of people that are using drugs. That's all it's all about. Minimize the number of people using drugs. Why do we want to do that? We want to do that because we believe that the damage from drug use is so tremendous on our society that the less people using drugs, the better off for our society. Now, what do I mean damage to our society? What are we talking about? You've heard that drug abuse is a victimless crime. Just the opposite. There are more victims of drug abuse than there are most any other crime because, number one, the person using the drug is a victim. They are self-chosen, but they're in fact victims of a crime. And I can tell you, for instance, while we're sitting here, there are 10 people in the last today that died because they were impaired by drugs driving and killed themselves. There are 100 people today that overdose behind drugs. Okay, 100 people today that overdose behind drugs. Not to count, and you've seen it if you've been around the drug scene at all, you've seen people drop out, you've seen good kids that look like they were going to make it, all of a sudden things have changed, they don't care anymore. If you've dealt with meth people, you know what that's all about. It's tragic. What happens to these poor people that let drugs overtake them? Okay, so that's one victim. No doubt doubt about it. You cannot deny that those people, look at your Hollywood types, how many times they're in rehab because of what drug does to them. So there's no doubt that they're victims. Self-chosen, but they're victims. Then you got the families and friends. And if you know anything about anybody that's ever had a member of the family involved in drug abuse, they are absolutely victims. I don't know how many times I've talked to parents, what happened to my little girl, what happened to my little boy? They've changed. They don't care anymore. They're dropping out of school. When you talk about drug endangered children, go into one of these houses if somebody's using meth or heroin or any one of the other drugs and look what kind of parents they are. I have seen it day in and day out, and I got to tell you, it's heartbreaking. When you see families split up, spousal abuse, child abuse is rampant. About 40% of your child abuse is behind drugs. So that's another victim. And another thing about those people, who turns family members on their drugs? Other family members or friends. So not only are they only self-chosen, but they want to share their misery with somebody else. Then you've got another set of victims, and that's the people who are the victims of their crime. Now, I know what you think. Yeah, well, they're out robbing and stealing. 5% of your crime relate to robbing and stealing to support your habit. The majority of the crime is dealing with violence. That's fights, that's assaults, that's spousal abuse, that's child abuse, all the violent crime. The nexus between violent and crimes is indisputable. Nobody's going to deny that, and most of the people in prison are there for way majority are there for violent crime. So that's a victim. And if you've never been victimized by any of that, you're still a victim because you're paying a price for it, which is about $190 billion a day for the social aspect of drug abuse. Okay, so we want to reduce that as much as we can because we don't want people to be victims. So what's the other thing? How do we do that? What are the 4 factors that affect the rate of drug abuse in a community? There are 4 factors of this. The price. The higher the price, the less people use drugs. Simple economics. Next is availability. The less availability is, the less people use drugs. The more available, the more people use drugs. And that includes search time, how long it takes to get it. Okay, now you've heard people say, you can get drugs all over the place. Well, okay, if it was that easy, it would have been easy for me to be an undercover agent. I wouldn't need to work with a foreman. I could just go up and buy drugs. It's not as easy as people would like you to believe to buy drugs. Secondly, and also sometimes you go into areas you really want to be seen in. And then the other factor is risk, perception of risk. What is the perception of risk? That's the risk of getting in trouble, the risk of what it does to your body, the risk of what it does to you mentally. The higher the perception of risk, the less drug use, the lower the perception of risk, the more drug use. And they did a survey of New Jersey and California students. 60% of them said, we do not use drugs because we don't want to get in trouble. That's fine with me. If that keeps you off drugs, that's fine with me. And lastly, it's public attitude. When I talk about public attitude, I'm talking about starting with a family unit, down to the community, the neighborhood, all the way up to the state and the country. The more tolerant we are of drugs, the more people use. The less tolerant, the less people use. Okay, those are the 4 factors. Now, how have we done? In this country, with our drug policy, 8%, about 21 million people, 27.7 million people are considered drug users. Now, drug users are people that have used a drug within the last 30 days. Unlike Jess is going to say, hey, half the kids have used drugs, smoked marijuana within a year. That's accurate. Okay, same stat. We get the stats from the same place, but they don't continue to use it. It's only 10% of our kids are using. Overall, it's about 8% of our population. Okay, now let's take the other drug, one that we could use as a model, alcohol. Okay, we have over 50% of our people are regular users of alcohol. We have almost as many people addicted to alcohol as use all the illegal drugs. Why do you think that is? Alcohol is relatively inexpensive. Price, readily available, very little perception of risk, and public attitude is totally accepting of alcohol. Now, when you talk about alcohol, you want to talk about damage. You want to talk about 11,000 people a year killed because of drunk drivers, 3,000 because of drugs. And they killed themselves. 3,000 people killed themselves when they were tested. They were driving. They were under the influence of drugs. Okay, so what you do is you compare drugs, you compare alcohol. There's no comparison. You see what happens when we legalize something. You see what happens when we prohibit something. And interesting enough, of all things, smoking. We are using prohibition against smoking. You can't smoke here. You can't smoke there. I know there's 4 people out there. They had to go outside. You can't smoke at a casino. You can't do this. You can't do that. So the price of cigarettes has skyrocketed. It used to be 30 cents a pack when I was a kid. Now it's $5 a pack. The availability used to be they had cigarette girls in every bar. They had cigarette machines in every lobby. Everybody had a pack of cigarettes and say you want a cigarette. Availability's been reduced. And what else? The perception of risk is skyrocketed. People now know it causes cancer. And public attitude, you got to feel that if you smoke and you're outside all by yourself in the cold and it's raining and snowing out and you puff away on that cigarette, you feel like a leopard. Like, oh my God, people are looking like, what's wrong with you? Because the public perception has changed. So here, where it's working with drugs, and I'd like to see it be down to 6% and 5%, where it was twice as what it was in '79. But I'd like to see us reduce drugs all the more. But it's working with cigarettes because we've gone down from 50% of the people using cigarettes now to 20%. That's great. That's phenomenal. We need to get it down even more. And we will if we continue the way we're going, affecting those 4 factors. So as you listen to this debate, keep those things in mind. As you listen to the statistics, and everybody's going to disagree, but keep those things in mind, what it's all about and what we're trying to do. And I'll talk a little bit later about what we're trying to do by saving lives, because every life is a human being. And every kid is a real kid. And I've seen it. I have seen more drug abuse, a tragedy. I've been there, okay? I've got 4 family members involved in drugs, 1 with meth and alcohol, 1 with cocaine, 1 with marijuana, and 1 with strictly alcohol. I've seen it from a personal standpoint. I've spent my whole career in and out of houses and seen the devastating effects of drugs. And it's real easy when you're a first responder to say, no, it's not worth it. I've seen those kids. I've seen the refrigerators with corroded milk and crap all over the bed, and the kids starving to death. I've seen that day in and day out. When you've seen that, you come with me and then tell me you think we ought to legalize this stuff. Well, we can keep it down, because every experiment with legalization and every study that's done, it will at least double. It will at least double if we, and some people think triple, Holland it tripled, most places it doubled, some think quadruple, but at least double. And if that's acceptable to you, it's not acceptable to me. So thank you very much, and on with the debate.